Hey horror fans, and welcome back to HorrorScoped. Poppy Playtime Chapter 2 is out, and that means it's time to take another look at the mystery behind the game. Today we're going to take a look at something we have previously theorized about on this channel. With new information provided in Chapter 2, we just might have to rethink our theory surrounding the mysterious Experiment 1006, otherwise known as a prototype. Strap in, get ready for spoilers, and prepare yourself for a wild ride, because this thing is shaping up to be far creepier than I initially thought. So, what is the prototype? When Chapter 1 originally launched, there were theories about what Experiment 1006 actually was. The community had one VHS tape to go off of, and as you can imagine, speculation ran wild. The most prevalent ideas were that the player was in fact 1006, or, as we theorized, it may have been Huggy Wuggy himself. Huggy's characteristics fit well enough at the time, and things tend to lean towards the simplest explanation usually. However, that's considering having all the pieces to the puzzle, which we surely did not. As Chapter 2 has revealed more pieces to that puzzle, we are left to scrap our previous thoughts, as things surrounding the prototype seem to be more complicated than once believed. With that said, how do you feel about a simulation? A simulation, or the absorption and/or digestion of something, is of course a well-explored idea in horror as well as other genres. The Thing comes to mind in terms of film. The Thing, in The Thing, was an absolutely horrifying creature that spread like a disease, effectively taking over the body of whoever was exposed to it, and using, essentially, their body as a disguise to spread to others. Terrifying without a doubt, but only one example of how this idea of absorption can be put to use. The prototype is a completely different monster. In contrast to the Thing's almost viral or parasitic nature, the little information we have on the prototype seems to be setting it up as a methodical and cunning creature of both flesh and metal, if its chilling appendage is anything to go off of. I mean, it has human bones attached to it. What? As we've investigated the Playtime Co. factory so far across 2 chapters, we've come across mutilated toys on a number of occasions. Honestly, it looks like a murder took place here, and yet this factory is supposed to be a place of joy. While initially we believed this to be the work of Huggy Wuggy, it is apparently the handiwork of the prototype. This experiment seems to be taking parts of toys for its own use. This may sound crazy until you hear how it did the same exact thing to trick the researchers at Playtime Co. For this, we turn to the black tape that can be located towards the end of the chapter. You can find this tape after Mommy Longlegs is defeated, and you begin to climb up all the metal stairs. The tape states that Experiment 1006 had been locked in containment and nearly made an escape. How did it do this, you might be thinking? Well, it disassembled the alarm clock in its confinement area and used the components to build a laser pointer, which it then used to disable the security camera. So, the hand's true identity is apparently MacGyver. Though the camera was only offline briefly, it was more than enough time for 1006 to hide in one of its blind spots before it came back online. A surveillance specialist, thinking the prototype had escaped, entered the containment room for verification. They soon discovered the clever trap. However, it was too late. Another specialist had no choice but to lock the room back down remotely before the prototype could escape, sealing the fate of their coworker. More troubling still is the contents of the gray tape from Chapter 1, which would seem to have been recorded sometime after the black tape, given the narration depicting 1006 as missing. This would of course imply that it had escaped, which we as a player confirmed ourselves when we saw its hand drag what was left of Mommy Longlegs under a doorway and into the darkness. Mommy Longlegs also seemed to have some knowledge of Experiment 1006 and regarded him with a great deal of dread, fearing that she would become part of him now that the player had brought her apparent life to an abrupt and frankly painful end with the grinding machine. She specifically refers to the hand as him though. There's evidence all over regarding Playtime Co.'s experimentation with the poppy flower, toys, and children. In fact, this entire chapter took the protagonists on a trip through the middle of some of their testing facilities that were designed to find superior candidates among those children. Children who the employees of the company had adopted and thought were being taken care of while they did their jobs, with the overarching theory being that some of these children were themselves becoming these living toys. We have to ask, just who is it that became Experiment 1006? Who became the prototype? Similar to the speculation surrounding Poppy herself and Stella Graber, this theory is hinting towards Elliot Ludwig himself. Like Poppy and Stella, there isn't a lot of evidence beyond Stella's yearning to be a child forever, and the fact that the 2 characters share a voice actress. With Elliot, we have to look at the apparent loss that he suffered, and wonder whether or not it would be enough of a driving force to perhaps turn himself into a toy, or at the very least, begin the pursuit of techniques needed in general to bring life to a toy. A parent's loss of a child is a tremendously heartbreaking and powerful event. one that could drastically change someone, or even potentially drive them to do the unthinkable. This is what seems to have happened, and while there's no hard evidence that Elliot Ludwig is experiment 1006, the experiments he developed and led painted a grim picture of where his state of mind was. I mean, it's a pretty crazy list of things. Animal testing, trying to bring dead rats back to life through the apparent mystical qualities of the poppy flower, and a desire to test it on other subjects to see if the results would differ. The death in his family seemed to be driving him to find a path to resurrection, by any means necessary. The prototype could have even been meant for this child, but frankly, its very appearance and name would seem to indicate that it, or rather he, is unfinished. The fact that he is seeking out parts from other toys, including Mommy, supports this. This mechanical monster is kind of interesting, given the inspirations of Poppy Playtime. The prototype is quite reminiscent of creatures from other popular games and films. Though the likes of the Thing was mentioned earlier, a prime example from another game would be Ennard from Five Nights at Freddy's sister location. Ennard is a great topic because though the general idea is similar, the execution is completely different. Where the prototype is a single, incomplete entity seeking to build itself up, Ennard was a result of many animatronics coming together in order to accomplish a goal. At least if you look at it one way. Of course, they invaded a human body to make this happen, but hey, it's a horror game, right? Another Five Nights at Freddy's example will be the Blob from Security Breach, as it's a complete hodgepodge. All we've seen of Experiment 1006 is, of course, its slender hand. An honorary mention for its potential influence could be from the stop-motion film Coraline, specifically her other mother, whose hands are very similar, metal and thin, and with the ability to separate and go after their targets. One of the last interesting things I want to talk about is the information we gather when we die. Poppy Playtime has a funny way of rewarding us for our failures, and in Chapter 2, there is quite a lot of new information gathered in these messages. Some messages state that he is loose, and an emergency lockdown is in place similar to the VHS tapes. Fates worse than death are mentioned as well, and it is unknown whether this is talking about getting trapped in the body of a toy or becoming part of the prototype. One strange message states that the prototype has saved them. They then go on to say, "Isn't he wonderful?" Another states innovation is key. May we forget death. All of this makes it sound like the prototype itself is a divided topic. Some people fear it, while others celebrate its existence. There's certainly a divide going on. No matter how you look at it, the prototype's existence is intimately tied to Elliot Ludwig one way or another, regardless if it is in fact him or not. This man, who has suffered a great loss, has done unspeakable things behind closed doors, horrendous experiments on living subjects. Deep beneath the floors of Playtime Co. factory, experiments have gone on for decades, and no one in the outside world has any idea what has happened. If nothing else, the prototype is the embodiment of this man's pain. At the end of the day, we're still left with far more questions than answers surrounding this creepy and mysterious character. While we wait for the third chapter of Poppy Playtime, all we can really do is speculate, which of course is fine. With time comes fun ideas, and perhaps maybe some clues we may have missed along the way. But that's all I got for now. But please share your own theories in the comments below. And until next time, horror fans, cheers!